Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1225B, and today's date is March 10th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The World is on the Brink of Something Disastrous. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I finished up an interview with Bix Weir, and he really broke down what is going to happen, what the experience is going to be like when this entire system is going to come down, and it's going to be up on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel around 8:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time. You can also come over to the X22report.com site or News Sentinel. All you have to do is scroll down, look over to your right-hand side. You will see the video there. I will also send the email out for those people who are on the email alert system. But this is one interview you need to listen to. He puts everything together, and it is following his Road to Ruta theory. So again, it will be up tomorrow morning, Saturday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, we understand that the Department of Justice under Obama, there were many different scandals, fast and furious. They really didn't look at Clinton's emails. They kind of just said, we don't have to look at that. They wanted to prosecute those individuals that didn't believe in climate change. And U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, well, it looks like he's not ruling out an independent investigation of the Department of Justice under the Obama administration. And he expressed an openness to a third-party investigation of the Department of Justice under the Attorney General Eric Holder and his successor Loretta Lynch. And I believe this is most likely what the Obama administration and all these individuals were afraid of, that they were going to open up investigations and peer into what exactly they were doing. And we can see at this point that this is what most likely they've been trying to cover up and keep everyone distracted from the real issues. So they started, cyber attacks, Russia, and they tried to do everything they possibly can to try to remove certain individuals so they would never go ahead and do any type of an investigation. Now, since Vault 7 came out, and we can see there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of information in there about how the CIA went ahead and spied on the American people. Now, it's very interesting because the corporate media, they mentioned it, but they're saying it's really not a big deal. It's just one of those WikiLeaks things that probably amounts to nothing. But Pence is out there, and he's saying that, listen, if this turns out to be valid, that these are actually valid CIA documents, he said that no resource will be spared in holding the guilty parties to account, that they will do a full investigation and they will investigate the inner workings of the CIA. I say they should just do it right off the bat. I mean, look at the information that's coming out right now. Now, John McAfee is out there, and he says that the alleged CIA practice of deliberately keeping software exploits unpatched for potential access is like not giving sick people penicillin. Now, John McAfee said the CIA has confirmed that they knew of zero-day exploits years in advance of the manufacturers of the software finding out. Basically, by not fixing those faults, it puts customers of Google, Apple, Microsoft, and many other American manufacturers at risk. It puts their reputation at risk, and it costs us billions of dollars. And again, they also violated our rights. They also used our devices without our permission, without compensation. They also left holes in these devices for real hackers to come in and have access to information. I mean, these individuals right now should be arrested. They should be brought up on charges, not just for the violation of our rights, but it's criminal to use your device and allow an open portal and actually keep the security from doing its job on each one of these devices. It's like removing the lock from your house and telling you that your home is secure and anyone can just walk through the door. Now, they might remove the back door lock and leave the front door lock there to make you think that you're secure, But those individuals that know to go around to the back, they can just walk right in. And this is exactly what they've done. Not just to one manufacturer, to all manufacturers, and put everyone at risk. All the data, all your private information is at risk right now. Now, in the Air Force, there was a leaked email, and it was sent out to airmen who are a little pissed off after receiving it, because in the email, there was a list of words to avoid using both on and off Lackland Air Force Base. And the words like boy and girl were on it, citing a 100% zero tolerance policy by the Air Force. And here's some of the words. They can't use boy. They can't use girl. You can't use you people. Can't use colonial. Can't use blacklist, blackmail, blackball. Sounds Greek to me. Blondes have more fun. And they're telling everyone on this base that these are the certain words you cannot use. Now, again, this is not freedom of speech. This is controlled speech, telling you what you can and cannot say. And once again, we're seeing this all over the country lately, especially in colleges and schools. The corporate media pushes this out because they're trying to create and mold us into what they want, a controllable people. Once they can control language, they can control thought. They can control the narrative. And this is what they've been trying to do. Now, out in Illinois, we see that there are senators. Senator Julie Morrison, she has proposed a bill titled SB 1291, which would allow the government to confiscate firearms from citizens without any due process. Now, SB 1291 would create a lethal order of protection whereby the firearms of Illinois residents could be confiscated if a family member or a law officer files a petition stating the gun owner poses an immediate and present danger of causing personal injury to himself, herself, or another by having a weapon. Now, basically, if this bill passes, then a resident of Illinois could have his or her firearm confiscated if a family member alleges that the person in question is an immediate threat to himself or others. All they have to do is file a petition and report the allegation, and the weapon is taken away with no proof whatsoever. This is a little scary right now. And we can see that hopefully this does not pass, but you can see the gun grabbers, they're trying to push their agenda any way they possibly can to try to remove weapons from the people. And again, the country is based on due process, about keeping your rights, and other individuals have to prove why you've broken a law. You have to prove that the person's guilty, because you're innocent until proven guilty. And by just signing a petition because you think something, well, that violates all our rights. Now, a couple of reports ago, we talked about South Korea and how the president there, Park Geun-hye, how she was being impeached. Well, it looks like the Constitutional Court in South Korea upheld the impeachment decision, removing her from office on Friday over a graft scandal involving the country's conglomerates. Now, during this, there were riots. Her supporters were marching on the streets. 2 or 3 were killed in the clashes with police outside the court. And we see right now that this is the first time that this has actually happened in South Korea. Now, we talked about how China came out and they were talking about how the U.S. and North Korea should sit down and talk about the nuclear weapons. And we know there was a meeting set up, and then, of course, that got derailed. And at this point, this is what the U.S. should do. We should talk about peace, not escalate the situation. So what we're seeing right now, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, well, she rebuffed the Chinese plan for the U.S. and South Korea to halt their annual Foul Eagle War Games in return for a freeze by North Korea on its nuclear and missile program. So the 300,000 soldiers in South Korea are going to continually drill And they rather do that than speak to North Korea and put this to rest. I mean, does this make any sense? I mean, wouldn't the first course of some type of peace would be to, you know what, you're right, we should all sit down. Let's talk about the nuclear weapons. You will freeze your missile program. You'll freeze your nuclear program. And let's discuss where we're going to head off to from this point. Instead, you know what? No, we're going to provoke and continually hold this drill. Now remember, Trump placed Nikki Haley into the UN as the ambassador. So we see at this point, under the Trump administration, well, it looks like the war is set to fast forward here, because Haley told the media that the U.S. was reevaluating how to deal with North Korea. We are not ruling anything out, and we're considering every option that's on the table, except speaking to North Korea. So, again, it looks like the war drums are beating louder. Now, South Korea, they are saying that they're being cyber attacked by North Korea. And according to the ministry, cyber attacks on the South Korean government agencies have recently increased their protectionism. And they see that there's a lot of cyber attacks coming from the north. And they're worried about things getting out of hand and hitting some of their infrastructure. Now, again, do we know it's North Korea? Because we know from the Vault 7 documentation, the CIA can pretend to be anyone in the world. And is this part of their plan to push a war? Now, CENTCOM Commander General Joseph Votel confirmed that U.S. ground troops will be deployed into Afghanistan very, very soon. Now, what they're saying here is they're going to be ramping up soldiers in Afghanistan, because there was never a withdrawal from Afghanistan. That was great television where Obama said we're bringing soldiers home. That was because they didn't have the bilateral security agreement signed by Karzai, who was on his way out. So they had to wait for a new president of Afghanistan to come in. And of course, John Kerry went up there to help out who they really wanted. And as soon as that individual was placed into being the new official, they signed the documentation, and all the troops that were leaving Afghanistan, well, that was kind of slowed down, and then the opposite started to happen, where troops were being sent back in, and now we see they're ramping it back up. We see the Army has begun seeking sites for new bases in Europe. Now, the locations are northern Germany. They have been scouted out. And it is interesting that Germany is being scouted, since most recent U.S. deployments were in Europe and have been further east, with an eye toward getting a large number of troops along the Russian border. And it's also surprising because it was only a few years ago that the U.S. was openly trying to reduce the number of troops in Europe as a money-saving measure. And now the opposite is happening. So we have troops being built up in Europe, 2 new bases happening in Germany, troops going into Afghanistan, and the United States at this point, well, they're working on a 5-year enhanced cooperation plan with Iraq to keep troops in Iraq once the Islamic State is obliterated and out of Iraq. Because we know why they need to stay there. They need to stay because they need to keep the puppet regime in power. They need the country to continually ship off the oil and use the dollar on their oil reserves. This is what the United States does in every single country. They leave troops there. And these countries, they have to sign an agreement with the United States. And if they do not sign, then the troops cannot stay, which allows immunity for our soldiers. Now, we talked about Libya, how the people's government, they wanted an election next year. How the UN-backed government is completely falling apart right now. And we knew since all this was happening and Russia was getting involved and they were dealing with General Haftar, and the people were taking back the country, we knew eventually the United States government central bankers, well, they were going to have to go back into Libya. Right on cue, U.S. Africa Command Commander General Thomas Waldhauser stated that the Islamic State, they're trying to regroup in Libya. He was testifying in front of the U.S. Senate Armed Service Committee, and the timing is completely amazing. So we have Russia working with Haftar, UN-backed government is on its way out, the Libyan people won an election, and now the Islamic State, because the United States government central bankers are losing control of Libya, the Islamic State is now regrouping in Libya, which means the United States government central bankers are going to have to go back into Libya. They're going to have to go back into each one of these countries because the entire system is based on the petrodollar. And this is what they've been supporting all this time. And this is the deep state, the central bankers. Because they know if they don't do this, the system comes down. And all eyes and all fingers point to the central bank. Why did the system just crash? You just told us everything was fine. Now, the Syrian government is calling on the UN to force Turkey to withdraw their troops. They're saying that Turkey should be out of their country. They're making the situation worse. And if we go back to November of 2016, we see that the Syrian deputy foreign minister, he said the following: Turkey should immediately retreat from the Syrian territories. As long as Turkey continues occupation of the Syrian lands, the regional situation will not improve. And this was back in November of 2016. Here we are in March of 2017, and the situation has gotten worse there. And we see right now that the United States government, the central bankers, well, they are pushing World War III because the U.S. is planning to send 2,500 soldiers from the 82nd Airborne Division to Kuwait in preparation for their upcoming mission in northern Syria without permission of the Syrian government. And we can see that General Votel is trying to make a case of why the United States is allowed to be in Syria. They're not working with Russia. They're not working with the Syrian government. And the question is, are they escalating the situation in Syria? Are they really going after the Islamic State? Because we know in the past, the deep state, they've been supporting the Islamic State. The deep state funded the Islamic State. And their mission has always been remove Assad. And if they really wanted to go after all the terrorist organizations, why don't they work with Russia? Why don't they work with the country they invaded? I mean, think about this for a second. They're in a foreign country that didn't invite them in, and they're fighting terrorists in that country, but not coordinating with that government. Which shows you their real mission is not to remove the terrorists. Their real mission is to either take swaths of land, protect it, and say it's no longer part of Syria, or at the same time to go after Assad. And we can see right now that this is what they're doing. Now, I know Trump is out there saying that we're going to be going into Syria, going into Iraq, we're going to be removing the Islamic State. But once again, if you're not working with those countries, with the other forces that are there that are doing the same thing, what is the true mission? And we know in the past, the true mission was never to get the Islamic State. So we are headed down a path. We're heading into a disastrous situation. And we can see that with North Korea, with new bases being placed in Germany, with troops coming into the Middle East, the deep state, the central bankers, they are pushing their plan for war. They are not going to give up. Their agenda is to start a war. Their agenda is to reduce the population. Their agenda is to cover up what is about to happen. And if you notice, the debt ceiling comes up March 15th. You notice that all of this is being escalated in the same time space. And as we go throughout time in April and May, we should see things escalate in the Middle East with North Korea as the same time the economy is coming down because they need a complete cover-up. So we're headed into a period of time where things are going to get very chaotic, things are not going to look good, and things are going to collapse here. At the same time, the deep state central bankers pushing war. And everyone at this point should be looking at the situation, checking your preps, saying, okay, let's see where we're headed here, because I need to prep some more. I need to keep cash on hand. I need to keep gold and silver. Bitcoin, if that's your thing, seems like that's a viable option also. But whatever you're doing, I wouldn't stop right now. Actually, I would accelerate what you've been doing, because it looks like we're heading into a time period where things are just going to get worse. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.